Hello, everyone. So I'm Maria, the founder of Beyond Words, and it's a huge pleasure to be here today. Last year, we exhibited at AWE, and we won the startup competition as a startup to watch. So it's huge for us to be here today and tell you what happened from last year until today, and what are the evolutions about voice, AI, and human connection.
Hi, I'm Zoé Mallamaci. So I'm a PhD researcher at Université Côte d'Azur, and within my PhD, I do my research for Beyond Words. So yeah, that's why I'm here this year together with Maria.
So the points we're going to cover today are related to, sorry, let me check how we can move on.
Bouton vert.
Bouton vert pour avancer. Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
So, quick overview. So, technological advances brought new ways of learning, and such as a new format for classrooms. So it's the hybridization of classrooms. Those new methods, those new technological advances brought new learning methods, such as asynchronous learning, the fact of learning with time flexibility and space flexibility, MOOC, massive online courses, which are big courses, most of the time free or not, which are accessible to a large scale of person. Then immersive worlds, which bring the opportunity to learners to learn in context remotely. And also game-based learning, which is allowed throughout new technologies. So is the integration of game elements into learning methods.
And it is out of all these implementations of new technologies that Beyond Words was born. It started in 2020 as a project while I was a teacher, a language teacher, and the challenges that I noticed while students learn a language come from the fact that there is a discrepancy between the time spent learning understanding skills, so passive skills, and time spent learning active skills, so actually speaking. And the challenges that we can find in the classroom are developing and strengthening oral skills, since we don't have enough time to practice and be fluent at the end of the school cycle, the education cycle. Diversify course material, which is actually a paradox because students decreased their peak of attention over time. So the fact of spending time over the same activities over and over again doesn't have the same impact that it had 10 years ago on the learning outcome. And the fact of measuring progression, which is the most demanded indicator from schools and teachers, is something that teachers struggle with. So that's how the Beyond Words project and app was born.
Come on.
Allez.
Yeah. And together with that, challenges that are implied in the fact of learning a language, there's also the great impact of immersion, which has been studied extensively between 2009 and 2012 for language learning, because it has a strong impact on the fact of being somewhere while being somewhere else. So the subjective experience of being in one place, one environment, even when one is physically situated in another. So you see that there are great advantages to that. However, we also see that nowadays not every school uses virtual reality as a tool for language learning. And this is explained by the fact that virtual reality, you might know it because you're here, is a time-consuming process to create environments. It takes a lot of technical knowledge. And at Beyond Words, we also found that for language learning, you can go to the next slide, we made the decision of using 360 degrees images. Well, first of all, because it's technically easier to create. Because it can be filmed with a camera. But also, in language learning, it brings a sense of realness. So, for example, here we see a screenshot out of our one of our activities. So, in this context is a screenshot that we took from German-speaking activity. So there's a native German speaker. The video is recorded in Kassel in Germany. So the learner can experience a real conversation with a real speaker in a real environment with the architecture and all the context. So it brings a feeling of realness to the training. So as I took this quote from a searcher that researched the enhancement of intercultural competence. So together with language learning, learning into immersive environments also contributes to the development of intercultural communication competence.
The problem is me is not. Yeah. Oh. I'm sorry, the problem was me. Okay. So while the brain is tricked in this 360-degree environment, because just as a reminder, it takes the brain 30 seconds more or less to be convinced that the virtual environment is the real one, that's when the AI operates. And that's why the combination of VR and AI is particularly effective in the language learning process. So what happens is that while the video is being played, so the effect of being in a real place is produced, the AI detects the voice, analyzes pronunciation, vocabulary, grammar. So everything the teacher should be doing by listening to every student individually and doesn't have the time to do because the class time is limited. Students are sometimes very active during the classroom. Or on the opposite, some of them are too shy to speak in front of the others. So what happens is that the AI acts as an assistant while the experience is being produced, and the speech recognition is going to detect which language is being used. And that can be particularly effective for students that sometimes mix words. If they're learning French, for example, they're using a word in English because they're not remembering that, well, that's when speech recognition is going to step in and say, okay, you didn't use the right language, but I understood what you said. The instant feedback is going to allow students to know right when, as soon as the activity is finished, what happened and how well they did. And they're going to get a detailed report, which allows teachers to be assisted in their tasks of providing the KPIs that are asked by the school, which is what is the progress of the student throughout the year. And of course, the customized suggestions is an important part as well, because what the teacher would do listening to the student would be to say, okay, you have an issue, for example, conjugating the present simple, so let's do together some extra exercises to practice this form. So that's where the AI steps in once again, because this detection and analysis will be effective in order to provide those suggestions. Oh yeah, it was actually the big button. Okay.
So basically, what makes immersive environments work? I'm saying immersive environments here because we're not talking about virtual reality, because we're not using 3D computer-generated images, but rather immersive environments for language learning. So there's the immersion part, so where the learner is in a place with a setting, and then there's the interaction part. Remember the screenshot with the speaker. So the speaker is gonna ask questions and the learner is gonna have to answer those questions. So this is where the interaction takes place. If those two things are well executed, and depending also on the learner, you might have a sense of presence. So this is a very subjective feeling, and it doesn't occur to every learner. So, but normally immersion and interaction can bring a sense of presence, and if the learner gets to this feeling of presence, that's where the learning gets really, really effective. And also, so this is the part about immersion. And coupled with that, paired with that, we also have the fact of setting a routine for training. So someone has to train on a regular basis to make it work. And also, like Maria explained, with the AI, we got the feedback. So the learner will be able to receive instant feedback on his activity and regarding the interaction he had in the immersive environment.
So now a few words about the positive outcomes and later about the blocks and issues that might derive from this method. The positive outcomes is, and those that are actually what we have observed over 500 pilot tests that have been run since the beginning of the activity. We have not included the projects that have run until the end, but really the first phase, when students discovered the technology, started observing the results, and decided whether to keep going with the language learning or not. So what we observed is that the most common and evident positive outcomes are actually the engagement. Students find that the language practice, which can be sometimes very abstract and theoretical, because we focus on the grammar rules, the declension if we're talking about German or other languages, so about rules, becomes more practical, and students actually understand why they're learning something and how they're learning it. So the positive impact can be observed on the engagement. We saw that we moved from a 10-minute practice per week up to more than 30 minutes per week, which was observed during these pilot tests. Another indicator, which is pretty difficult to measure, is self-confidence. When we talk about language practice, we can measure that through the European framework. We can say that the person has an A1, A2, but what is pretty volatile can be self-confidence. One indicator that can show us when self-confidence increases is the time spent before the student starts speaking, and also time spent hesitating and reformulating sentences. So those are the indicators that were used to see that there was an improvement in the self-confidence. And of course, practice in context. As I was saying earlier, it is much easier when you understand why you're learning something, and VR actually is excellent at doing that, because you can see in a practical situation, in a restaurant, at a job interview, why you need to use a certain word and not another one. And now the limitations, which is the less fun part, because actually there are some limitations as well. The most frequent limitation that we observed is that when the pilot test, or when the new technology, which is VR or AI in this case, is implemented without a clear framework or without a clear objective, that's when the pilot test is not successful, because teachers, institutions get very enthusiastic about the new technology, the new method, but they don't have a clear idea of why they're doing it, what is the clear problem they're solving. And when this problem was not clearly defined, that's when we couldn't really work until the end of the pilot test. So the fact of having clear indicators before starting was key in order to overcome those limitations. Another issue can be, of course, budget. So one way to solve that is proceeding per lab or per cycles. When we saw the limitations were due to the budget and the use of headsets per student, instead of equipping the whole classroom, the whole establishment with headsets, we proceeded per small groups. So for example, 5 headsets for 20 students, and in this case there were practices organized per 5 minutes time periods. And so every student could actually practice throughout the hour, but during a limited time. And that was enough to see if the indicators that were the positive ones were observed, and if the project was successful, then the scaling was going to be implemented. And of course, the knowledge of the tools and the access of the tools is key as well, because as in every new technology, people need to be accompanied. We can't just leave them with the headset and say, okay, now it's up to you, and it's up to you to organize the classroom. So a huge work that needs to be done is actually to really treat that as a project. So be there for teachers, be there for students, and accompany them throughout the whole process. That can be the pilot test or the school year, even because things evolve pretty fast, and we saw in some cases that the first objective was a set of objectives for the pilot test, but when the actual use of the platform and the use cases started coming up, teachers observed that some other indicators were necessary to measure the effectiveness of the platform. So the fact of being there for teachers and to really accompany them throughout the process is key, so that the platform can be really effective for students. And the human presence. The objective of the platform is to simulate the real-life conversation with real people in a 360 degrees environment, but the human presence is essential, because that's actually why we learn a language. We want to learn a language to be there and talk to real people. So that was the key, and it can be a limitation when it is sometimes a little bit forgotten, let's say.
Yeah, so that was our presentation. We put our contact there, and if you have any questions, just feel free to ask them.
Just thanks for being here and for listening. Merci.
Any questions?
Yes, where's your company? In which country?
The company is a French company, and it's based in Montpellier. So it's the middle south, let's say, of France.
Hi. How are you, I know you talked about pilots and doing some pilot schemes. How do you plan to do like a larger rollout to places like schools or universities or language colleges? Will you work with like a reseller or a distribution partner, or do you plan to work directly with schools and education providers?
Thanks for the question. I didn't mention during the introduction that we already are selling. We have been existing since 2020. The data we presented about the limitations, the positive outcomes, were the ones that we observed through pilot tests, because this is the demo period where students can really see if, and teachers can observe if the technology sticks to their objectives or not, or answers to the problem or not. As active users and schools currently active, we're a little bit more than 800 active schools around Europe, around 3 in the US at the moment, but in the US we work more with universities and high schools. And in number of active students, there are a little bit more than 200,000 students active on Beyondwords today. And we do act as direct sellers, and also through a network of distribution.
Thank you.
And I would also add that as a researcher, my role will also be to continue this work of piloting and testing in the schools that we have. I will mostly focus on France, because my research is going to be written in French for a French university. But yeah, we're going to dig throughout our pool of users and see who's interested in going through tests and yeah, take part in it.
Thank you very much. I think some of the focus has been on classrooms and child learning so far. I was wondering if this system also works for adult learners and potentially solo learners as well?
Yeah, we did create the platform in order to work in a B2B environment. So we need to have a teacher and a student, or an administrator and a learner. We have had some use cases in professional training, so lifelong learning. It's not our main market at the moment, because usually the exercises are assigned according to the program that is currently running in the classroom. That's why this is our most common use case. We don't see the platform as adapted to an individual use, like in a B2C model, because we will still need an administrator to assign the activities week per week. Otherwise, one possibility would be just to assign the whole catalog and let the AI do the suggestion work for them. But that's not something we have implemented so far because we don't have enough demand for that.
And I would also add that's why we added in our limitations the fact that human presence, especially for learning purposes, is still needed. Like, you need to have a teacher at some point. Like, I mean, I think you've all tried maybe learning a language with apps such as Duolingo, which are game-based and self-learning apps. It can get you to a point, but at some point you feel like you have to either interact with a human person or have like a human tutor that can tutor your learning.
Any more questions? All right. Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation.
Thank you.